There was a man who lived in a forgotten corner of a busy city, a man whose name was Daniel Reed. Every morning he woke up with the same heavy feeling pressing against his chest, the feeling of being utterly invisible. He walked through crowded streets where thousands of faces passed him by, yet not a single eye truly saw him. He spoke in meetings where his ideas dissolved into the air like smoke, unheard and forgotten before they even reached anyone's ears. He helped his neighbors carry groceries, fixed broken fences without being asked, and always showed up when someone needed an extra hand. But when Daniel needed help, when he reached out with trembling fingers hoping someone would notice, the world turned its back. And every night, lying in the darkness of his small apartment, he asked himself the same torturing question that echoed through his soul. Why does nobody respect me? What is wrong with me? Am I not good enough? Am I not worthy? The question haunted him like a ghost that refused to leave. One particular evening, after another day of being overlooked and dismissed, Daniel found himself sitting alone on a park bench as the sun melted into the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. His hands were buried in his face, and for the first time in years, he allowed himself to cry. Not loud sobs, just silent tears that spoke of years of invisible wounds. Then, through his blurred vision, he noticed an elderly man sitting on the opposite bench, watching him with eyes that seemed to carry the wisdom of 1,000 lifetimes. The old man didn't look away when Daniel noticed him. Instead, he stood up slowly, walked across the path, and sat down beside Daniel without asking permission. The silence between them felt strangely comfortable, like the old man understood everything without Daniel having to say a single word. After what felt like an eternity, the old man finally spoke, his voice gentle but firm, like the steady flow of an ancient river. "Young man," he said, "I've been watching you for weeks now. I see you every evening, carrying that heavy weight on your shoulders, walking like the world has crushed your spirit. And I know exactly what you're asking yourself because I once asked the same question." Daniel lifted his head, his eyes red and swollen. "You did?" The old man nodded slowly. "I spent 30 years of my life begging for respect, searching for it in other people's eyes, waiting for someone to finally see my worth. But respect never came, until one day I discovered something that changed everything." Daniel leaned forward, desperate for answers. "What did you discover?" The old man smiled, a knowing smile that held both sadness and hope. "I discovered that respect is not something you find out there in the world. It's something you create inside yourself first. And once you master that, the world has no choice but to reflect it back to you." The old man introduced himself as Marcus, and over the next hour, as the stars began to appear in the darkening sky, he shared with Daniel the 5 invisible laws that transform how the world sees you. He explained that most people spend their entire lives searching for respect in all the wrong places, trying to impress others, seeking approval, changing themselves to fit into boxes that were never meant for them. But true respect, Marcus said, doesn't come from performing for others. It comes from mastering yourself. The first law, he began, is the law of presence. When you enter a room, do you apologize for existing, or do you own your space? Your body speaks a language more powerful than words. Stand tall, not because you're better than anyone else, but because you refuse to make yourself smaller for anyone's comfort. Let your spine be straight, your shoulders relaxed, your chin parallel to the ground. When you carry yourself with quiet dignity, people's subconscious minds receive a signal that you are someone worth noticing. Daniel listened, absorbing every word like a man dying of thirst, drinking water for the first time in days. Marcus continued with the second law, the law of deliberate movement. In a world rushing everywhere, the person who moves with calm intention becomes magnetic. Stop hurrying through life like you're late for your own existence. Walk slower. Breathe deeper. Let every action be purposeful. When you rush, you tell the world that you don't value your own time. But when you move with steady confidence, people unconsciously step aside, they wait for you. They notice you. It's not about being slow. It's about being present in every moment, showing the world that you are exactly where you're supposed to be. Daniel felt something stirring inside him, a tiny spark of hope beginning to glow in the darkness that had consumed him for so long. Marcus smiled, seeing the change beginning to take root, and he pressed forward with the third law. Third law is the law of the steady gaze. Most people hide behind their eyes, avoiding contact because they're afraid of being seen or rejected. But when you look someone in the eyes, not with aggression or challenge, but with calm, genuine presence, you communicate something profound. You tell them without words that you see them as equals, that you're not intimidated, and that you respect both yourself and them. It's not about staring people down or trying to dominate. It's about being comfortable enough in your own skin that you don't need to look away. Practice this, Marcus said firmly, and watch how conversations change. Watch how people suddenly treat your words with more weight. Daniel nodded, already imagining the faces of his co-workers, the neighbors, the strangers on the street. Could something so simple really change everything? Then came the fourth law, and Marcus's voice softened with tenderness as he spoke. The law of deep listening. In a world where everyone is screaming to be heard, the person who truly listens becomes rare and valuable. Most people listen only to respond, waiting for their turn to speak, planning their next words while pretending to pay attention. But real listening, the kind that makes people feel genuinely seen and understood, that's a form of respect so powerful it transforms relationships. When you give someone your complete attention, when you ask questions that show you truly care about understanding their perspective, you give them a gift that most people never receive. And in return, they will respect you not because you demanded it, but because you made them feel important. Daniel felt tears threatening to return, but this time they were different. These were tears of recognition, of finally understanding something he had been blind to his entire life. Marcus placed a weathered hand on Daniel's shoulder and delivered the fifth and final law, the law of intentional silence. In chaos, everyone shouts. In confusion, everyone panics. But the person who can remain calm, who can hold their peace and wait for the right moment to speak, that person commands attention. Silence is not weakness. It's power under control. When everyone around you is losing their minds, be the one who stays grounded. And when you finally do speak, speak with clarity and purpose. Your words will cut through the noise like a blade through silk because you didn't waste them. People respect those who don't need to fill every moment with sound, who are comfortable enough with themselves to simply exist without constant validation. Daniel felt the weight of these words settling into his bones, changing something fundamental in the way he saw himself and the world around him. The next morning, Daniel woke up different. Not because the world had changed, but because he had. He stood in front of his bathroom mirror, and for the first time in years, he looked himself directly in the eyes. He straightened his shoulders, lifted his chin, and took a deep breath. Today, he decided, would be the first day of the rest of his life. When he walked into his office building, he didn't rush. He didn't hunch his shoulders or stare at the ground. He walked with calm, deliberate steps, his presence filling the hallway in a way it never had before. And something remarkable happened. People noticed. His coworker Sarah, who had walked past him without acknowledgement for 3 years, looked up and smiled. "Good morning, Daniel." The security guard, who had never learned his name, nodded with respect. "Morning, sir." It was subtle, but it was real. The shift had begun. In his morning meeting, when his boss asked for ideas, Daniel didn't immediately blurt out his thoughts like he used to, desperate to be heard. Instead, he waited. He listened to everyone else speak, watching the room carefully, understanding the dynamics at play. And when the conversation began to circle and people started repeating themselves, he leaned forward calmly, made eye contact with his boss, and spoke just one clear sentence. What if we approach this from the customer's perspective instead of our own? The room fell silent. Heads turned. His boss leaned back in her chair, considering his words with genuine interest. That's actually brilliant, Daniel. Why didn't we think of that before? But Daniel knew why. It wasn't that the idea was so revolutionary. It was that for the first time, he had presented it with the quiet confidence of someone who respected his own voice. And that respect was contagious. Over the following weeks, Daniel continued practicing the 5 laws that Marcus had taught him. He stood tall in every room he entered, no longer apologizing for taking up space. He moved through his days with deliberate calm, refusing to rush through his own life. He looked people in the eyes when they spoke, giving them the gift of genuine attention. He listened deeply, asking questions that showed he truly cared, making people feel valued and understood. And he embraced silence, speaking only when his words would add value, allowing his presence to speak louder than any desperate attempt to be heard. And the transformation was nothing short of miraculous. His boss started asking for his opinion in important decisions. His neighbors invited him to community gatherings. Strangers on the street made eye contact and smiled. But the most profound change was internal. Daniel no longer needed external validation because he had learned to validate himself. Months later, Daniel returned to that same park bench where he had met Marcus, hoping to thank the old man who had saved his life. But Marcus was nowhere to be found. Daniel sat down on the bench, watching the sunset paint the sky in those same orange and purple hues. And he realized something beautiful. Marcus had given him something far more valuable than advice. He had given him a mirror, a way to see himself clearly for the first time. And in that mirror, Daniel had discovered the truth that changes everything. Respect is not something you chase in the external world. It's something you cultivate inside yourself, in the way you stand, the way you move, the way you meet the world with quiet confidence. When you respect yourself deeply, authentically, without arrogance or apology, the world has no choice but to reflect that respect back to you. As Daniel sat there in the fading light, a young woman approached the bench, her eyes red from crying, her shoulders slumped with the weight of invisible burdens.